we could get to the point where the wastewater just doesn't fit.
We can't process it
We
fast
can't process it fast enough. We don't have the room to process it, so that could potentially affect growth.
Another thing that could happen is, if you're on the system, if you're a user, you may start seeing service interruptions or even potentially backflow into your house, right?
I mean, that might even be worse than the scenario that I
right?
that I planned for.
Hello and welcome to the Something Better podcast. I'm Joe Conroy with the City of Bakersfield, and today I'm joined by Evette Roldan, our Assistant Water Water Director from the Water Department. Nice to have you today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
So we're going to talk a little bit. You're over wastewater, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. The Water Department has the Wastewater Division and the Water Resources. I oversee the wastewater.
Okay, cool. So let's start a little bit. What is wastewater, and then we can talk a little bit about what your department or your division does.
Sure. So wastewater in general is literally everything that would go down your drain at home. So it's water that has been used for a purpose. So if you shower, if you do your laundry, wash your dishes, all of that gets used, makes its way down the drain, flush your toilet, all of that is considered wastewater. For a commercial user, that could be, if they're washing dishes in an industrial kitchen, all of that is wastewater.
Okay. And then as a division, what does the wastewater division do for the city, and how do you guys handle that wastewater?
So the wastewater division is responsible for operating the 2 wastewater treatment plants that the city has. We also are responsible for managing the sewer enterprise fund, which also covers costs for the operation and maintenance of the sewer system. However, the actual work of that operation and maintenance is covered under Public Works Department. So, but we manage the finances for all of it, and we manage the 2 wastewater treatment plants. And
it's probably some of that the reason there's a little carryover between water and Public Works is wastewater actually used to be part of Public Works, right?
Yes, yeah. So we officially became part of the Water Department as of July 1st, 2024. So it's still recent, just a little over 12 months. So that is why there's that bit of overlap and sort of collaboration with the other department.
And then you are relatively new in this position?
In this position, yes, simply because with the restructuring of the department and with the division coming under Water Department, there was a bit of a title change. However, the position itself and the responsibility hasn't changed too much. Before I was the wastewater manager. Same level of responsibility, just a little different title change there.
And you're overseeing all those operations then?
Absolutely, yes.
That's a lot of stuff going on, I imagine.
It is, but it's fun.
Okay.
Keeps me on my toes.
All right. So we'll go a little bit more in depth here, a little bit too, with kind of what the department does. So I guess I'll say this is maybe a little bit of the fun part. Okay. What happens when the wastewater leaves my house?
Excellent. So the city has roughly about 1,100 plus miles of sewer pipes. So when you put something down the drain, it makes its way through the network of sewer pipes that we have, our sewer collection system. We have roughly about 60 lift stations within the city. So depending on how far away your home is from one of the 2 treatment plants, it'll make its way down a pipe through a lift station. The lift station is meant to basically push water. Most of it we try to gravity feed from wherever you're producing that wastewater all the way to the sewer plants. However, there are some low spots, so wherever there's a low spot, we need a lift station to, basically lift the water back up to an elevation so that it can continue on its way to the next point by gravity. So we have roughly a little over 1,000 plus miles of sewer pipe, 60 lift stations throughout the city. Once it makes its way through that sewer collection system and makes it to one of the 2 treatment plants, it then is treated at one of the 2 facilities that we have.
And when you say treated, what does that mean?
It's the process by which we take the dirty wastewater and give it a treatment that is in line with our permit requirements. So that means it goes through a series of bar screens to remove all the debris that could potentially harm our system or our equipment downstream. It goes through various tanks, we call them primary clarifiers, which separate solids from liquid. Once the solids are separated from the liquids are treated biologically through either activated sludge or trickling filter systems, depending on which plant it ends up in.
So the plants process it a little differently?
Yes, we have two treatment plants with two different treatment technologies at both. And different capacities, so it really is just a different plant altogether, one versus the other. So the liquid is treated biologically. The solids are digested. It's also a type of biological treatment. And basically that makes it, it converts it into a liquid or a solid that is then able to be disposed of in an environmentally compliant way. So our liquid either receives secondary or tertiary treatment. If it's secondary treatment, it gets land applied for agricultural irrigation. This is agricultural that is for non-human consumption crops, so basically animal feed.
So what you're saying is that water could be used to irrigate that
Yes.
that type of
A crop.
Yeah, the crop.
Yeah, exactly. The solids get digested, dewatered, basically dried up, and it ends up being like a manure type consistency. So a moist solid, a moist biosolid, and that also gets land applied. The city owns a couple of acres of farm fields that we lease out and operate. So there's a farmer that we have a contract with. They operate and maintain the farm fields. So they are responsible for making sure that the biosolids are properly land applied and that that application meets the permit requirements as well. So everything gets treated in a way that we can then kind of put back into the environment, meeting compliance and permit requirements.
So it gets reused. It's not, sent somewhere else or stored somewhere. It's basically recycled more or less.
It's really used, the biosolids especially. I mean, there's other cities that don't have acreage like the city of Bakersfield does, so that biosolids ends up in landfills. So there's no beneficial use in that. For us, it really is augmenting and beneficial for the land and the farm fields.
That's awesome. I mean, that's it sounds sustainable and,
Yes.
It's environmentally friendly. And, again, we're not sitting around in a landfill then and doing something else to the environment. So that's awesome. So sounds like quite the system, the process for all this.
Yes.
And you said we have two waste treatment facilities. How does all of this stuff get paid for? Where does the funding come from for these services?
So this is the sewer user. So if you are a resident of Bakersfield and you discharge into the sewer system, there is a rate on your tax bill, and that is utilized to pay for all of this operation. In state of California, we have Proposition 218. It gives the city the ability to assess the cost to provide this treatment and this service, and then calculate what the individual cost for each home is, and that's what gets put onto the tax roll. Now, with the Prop 218 process, the taxpayer also then has the opportunity to either support or oppose the proposed rates. So they do have a vote in that.
Yeah, they get a say in what they're paying for, and even if it's being paid for by the users of the service.
Yeah, and we have to we have the responsibility to show that it's a true cost to provide the service that you're receiving as a tax rate payer, and that we cannot go above beyond.
Yeah.
No, it's not for profit.
Yeah, there's nothing extra in there that we're performing the service. This is what it costs, and then we're tacking a little bit extra on. It's one for one.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then you going back to the two treatment plants, you said they have a little bit different systems, both capacity and then also their processes.
Yes.
Is that a matter of when these were built and the technologies that were available, or or is that on purpose?
Yeah, no, pretty much exactly. You nailed it. So back, let's go back to like 2006.
How old are these facilities?
Well, Plant 2 was initially designed in 1938.
Wow.
And constructed in 1939.
Wow.
So that's like the most, that is the original. Plant 3 was later in like the 70s, 77 I want to say. So very different. What I was saying, 2006, the two treatment plants were exactly the same. Plant 3 needed to expand because we were seeing more flow coming in, and it wasn't, we just needed more capacity. At that time, it basically opened up our permit. When the State Water Resources Control Board saw what we were doing, we the city, they said, we're going to impose more requirements on you, more regulations, so the type of treatment, trickling filter, doesn't cut it anymore, because we're going to require you to take out nitrogen, which can only really be done through activated sludge, At least that was the technology back in 2006 when these conversations
Right.
were happening. And that is what sort of propelled Wastewater Treatment Plant 2 to now be an activated sludge treatment facility because the trickling filter facility was just no longer going to meet the requirements that were being imposed.
Okay, by the state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Treatment Plant 2, that one's still a trickling filter facility. That one was upgraded back in 1997. So at that point, it met the requirements that the state wanted to impose on the city. That was new-ish technology back in that day. So that's why it was just, they went through expansions at different times and different requirements were imposed.
Yeah. So they've been upgraded over time.
Yes.
And then just so the listeners at home know, and we've talked about this before, we have Water Treatment Plant 2 and Water Treatment Plant 3.
Yes.
But no Water Treatment Plant 1.
Correct.
And that's because we had 1.
We did.
But it was then replaced by 3, correct?
Yes, it was decommissioned, I want to say in the 80s.
Okay.
In the 80s. It is where now the animal shelter, I think, sits.
Oh, okay.
Right. It was on the east side, just nearby Plant 2, but yeah, that one has been fully decommissioned. If you look at Google Earth and go back a few years, I feel like you could kind of see the silhouettes of some of the equipment. But yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, so that's why we have 2 and 3 and no 1. And
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the decision was made to not renumber them simply because if we had to go through historical documents, we would then have to be like, wait, is this which one's
two?
one, which one's
3?
two?
Yeah.
Like, was this pre this date or post that date?
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, that's interesting. And so, we've talked about these 2 plants. What's the future hold for those plants, or even just wastewater division in general?
So we are looking at upgrading and basically expanding the infrastructure. The city is growing, so for Plant 3, we are rapidly kind of approaching our design capacity.
And where is 3?
3 is on the southwest, so that is on McCutcheon, off of Ash and Gosford, in between, just north of the sports village.
Okay.
So Plan 3, we are rapidly growing on that, on the west side of the city. We are currently processing about 21.5 MGD, million gallons per day, out of the design 32. That is our capacity, so we definitely need to expand there. Plant 2, we still have plenty of capacity as far as, gallons coming in through the facility. We're permitted for 25 MGD. We are currently about 11 to 12 MGD, so plenty of room to grow there as far as the volume of gallons of water coming in. However, with all of these sort of water conservation measures that have been popular during the last couple of years, the characteristics of the wastewater coming in has changed. It's been noticeable. So you have the same amount of solids in less water. So it's less diluted, more concentrated. It
changes how you have to treat it.
It changes how you have to treat it, and it changes sort of the loading that we have to consider on the trickling filters, specifically because that is the Plant 2 treatment over there. So it is, while we still have room and capacity, if you were just to look at the gallons, if you start looking at the pounds per day that are coming into the treatment plant, we are, kind of inching towards that design parameter.
Okay.
It just wasn't equipped to treat water at that concentration.
Right. So we're looking at probably changes at both these facilities.
Yes. Yes, for different driving factors, but I think both need some attention and some changes.
And you said kind of the west side is growing a little bit more, and so that facility is going to be running into capacity issues.
Yes.
What happens if we don't do these upgrades and changes? Like, what are we looking at, down the line?
So hard policy decisions, I would say. On the one hand, if we could get to the point where the wastewater just doesn't fit. We
can't process it fast enough.
We can't process it fast enough. We don't have the room to process it, so that could potentially affect growth in various parts of town.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, if we don't have capacity in sewer lines or in the treatment plant, we could potentially, and this is like
down the
way
line.
Worst case scenario.
Right.
We get to a point where we no longer have the ability to issue will serve letters to developers because we physically cannot treat your wastewater.
Right.
There is no room for that. But that is, like I said, worst case scenario a few years down the line. Now, the other thing is, if we delay these projects thinking, there's something better that's going to, come in if we wait 2-3 more years, we also have to be aware of just like the construction costs. they go up every single year. So
Right.
if we're trying to wait to maybe see if prices go down for the construction or the cost of the projects, that's very unlikely. Or if we just say, hey, we're assuming this cost for the project, and we're just going to wait for more revenue to come in, then we need to make sure that the revenue keeps up with the increase of that cost of construction. So there's just more factors to consider the longer we wait.
Yeah. So time is kind of the essence to try to get this done and be able to move forward and make sure that, because another thing that could happen is, if you're on the system, if you're a user, you may start seeing service interruptions or even potentially backflow into your house, right?
I mean, that might even be worse than the scenario that I that I planned for. But yes, I mean, service could be affected.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming in and talking to us about this. It's obviously very important issues and things going on. We're going to have you back, soon to talk a little bit more about some of the rates and why they need to increase, what we're trying to do, and how those will be used. So again, thank you for coming in today, Evette.
My pleasure.
Much appreciated. For all of you who are listening, please be sure to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We hope you continue listening, and we hope you've enjoyed these so far. And hopefully you thank Evette as well for taking care of all that wastewater for us so it's not at our houses.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. This is the Something Better podcast, and I'm Joe Conroy. Thanks for joining us.